On this episode of the Bangkok Podcast, we ponder the immortal question for the ages: do you have to be a weirdo to be an expat in Bangkok?
But first, yet another reminder of our big anniversary show coming up and how you can get involved.
Let's get freaky, kids. Here's episode 2.48 of the Bangkok Podcast. Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who showed up on Thailand's fair shores in 2001 and never left said fair shores.
And I am Evo Terra, an American expat living full-time in Bangkok since the beginning of 2016, who's pretty sure we don't have very many fair shores around here. Regardless of that, thanks for joining us and welcome to the Big Mango.
Well, it rolls off the tongue better than gray and dusty shores. So.
True that.
Well, as is customary, we want to start this episode with a huge thanks to our supporters on Patreon who help us keep the show going and free of annoying ads. And as is the custom for supporters of the show shout-out level, we have someone to thank.
Indeed we do, my friend, and this week it is Mr. Chris Stevens, who upgraded his original pledge just so that he could take part in this bit on the show. Greg, so no pressure. Tell him about Chris Stevens.
Right. Because as you know, I do like to do a little bit of research about our patrons just to make sure they're the kind of upstanding people that you and I like to hang out with in our spare time. And I found out something really interesting about Chris. Now, I'm not sure if you know, but I myself have put a little bit of money in Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies. I think it's a fascinating topic, and I like to read articles on the subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the other day I was reading, and I found out there's a brand new cryptocurrency on the market that was developed by a guy who went to college with Chris, who is now an economist.
Oh.
Now, this economist, he developed this cryptocurrency and it set it up really well, and he needed a name for his new currency, and he wanted something that conveyed strength, consistency, resiliency, reliability.
Yep.
So he was racking his brain, he thought of his old college buddy right away, and starting next week, you can buy this economist's new currency, ChrisCoin.
Wow. What an amazing... That's unbelievable, Greg.
I know.
Really.
It's completely, almost totally unbelievable. But the bottom line is that Chris Stevens is such an amazing guy, they named a cryptocurrency after him. Wow. So there you go.
Well, if you would like to support our show, get access to bonus content, and get cool swag, and get Greg to say interesting and completely not true things about you, please head over to patreon.com/Bangkok Podcast and join up today.
Right. Leave a donation in ChrisCoin, and we'll get on accepting that all over the place.
Money.
So before we get into this week's topic of the required level of craziness that is required to live in Bangkok, unbelievable, hard to believe, but we're quickly approaching the 1 year episode. So it was 1 year since you and I have been doing this podcast. Yeah. So for our 50th show, we thought we'd have some fun and answer questions submitted by you, our listeners.
That's right. So if you have anything you would like to know about us, from us, rumors we have heard, it could be anything, right? Equipment that we actually use to record this show, if that's what you're into, to what our favorite Thai dishes are, great. Go to our Facebook page, our Twitter account, Line, or even the contact form on our website, and just send us a question. We're getting lots of them already, so we're getting a list compiled, and we will definitely find time to add your question answered in our own special way on our 50th show, which is only, it's this one and one more, and then the 50th show, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think the 50th show is going to be a long one because we've got a bunch of questions.
No, we're just going to answer all of them in less than 5 seconds. It'll be great.
I think we have 3 words for every question.
Right. Everything, please only ask questions that we can answer with yes or no. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Ask whatever you want. It'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll ramble on, just like Led Zeppelin.
Oh, man.
So on this episode, I thought it'd be fun if we talked about a topic that I've thought about on and off over the years. And it is basically the immortal question of expats living in Bangkok. Do you have to be a little bit strange to live here?
Yes. Show's over. Oh.
Goodbye. Now, not necessarily strange in a bad way, but I think that you have to, on some level, thrive on chaos and uncertainty and be okay with things like noise, culture shock, political instability. And I think in order to live here, you just kind of need an elastic outlook on life because nothing is as you expect it to be when you first get here. Now, all of those things are the exact opposite of life in most Western countries. So by definition, you kind of have to be okay with rejecting the normal, quote unquote, parts of your native culture.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone can do that.
Yeah, true. All of the things that you said were true. And when you came up with this suggestion today, I jumped on it. Not just because I've been having a really weird week, but because it's something that I completely get. You know, where you have. I look at some of the acquaintances that I have known over my nearly half century on the planet. I look at my family, close friends, all of those people, and I say, of them, how many of them could do what I am doing right now? And the answer is a pretty small number. Now, the good news is I got some weirdo friends that I think will be great here. But for the normals, yeah, not so much. So this seems like a fine topic because I'm weird and this place kind of works for me.
Yeah, and I'm weird too. I have always been seen as a bit eccentric, kind of a strange guy. I have a very dark sense of humor. I joke far too often about things that I probably shouldn't joke about. But a very good example of this is when I don't think I've talked about this on the show before, but when I first came to Thailand, I came over here with my best friend. We've been friends since we were 14 years old. Mm-hmm. He was my roommate for 5 years in Canada, just like a brother. And we came over here and we were supposed to stay for 4 months and he left after 12 days.
Ooh.
Now, we were very similar. Obviously, we've been friends for so long and we had so much in common. But when it came to Bangkok, it scared him away. And I was just like, oh, I love this. This is great. I'm going to stay. So something deeper there. So I am, for lack of a better word, weirder than he is and took to Bangkok in a better way that he did. So I think that you need to be a little bit strange in order to thrive here.
Yeah, you brought it up earlier, this idea about being able to thrive on chaos, right? And I guess that's what I do. I mean, that can be very unhealthy, right? I mean, there are some people who completely throw their lives out of kilter constantly, very, very dysfunctional people. And that's, don't think that's the case. I was a relatively successful person before I came here, right? And it wasn't like I had to run on the lam or anything crazy like that. But I have always considered myself a change agent and love change. In the organizations I have been in, I never stayed in the same job for the same role within a company for any more than a couple of years because I need to do something different. And that is just things that make me happy. And in fact, the few times I've left really, really good jobs with really, really stable companies has been when I've told the position you are in now, that's where you're going to be. And you're going to be paid a lot of money and you're going to be comfortable. You won't have any real responsibilities. You can sit here and, play games on your computer all day if you want to, but this is it. No more change for you. I quit. Within weeks because I can't do it. Because if there's...
It's like a Seinfeld episode when everything seems to be going well, they do something to screw it up.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite that self-destructive about it, but yeah, I need things to change and roll that into living in Thailand. That's all the time, right? I mean, change is going to happen constantly. For as much as the Thai country would like this idea of unity, it's chaos. You never really know what's going to happen from day to day. Maybe it's different if I were a Thai national embedded in here, but I'm not. I'm Falang, and so that means immigration status changes from day to day. The way that I'm accepted in various places will change from day to day, and that's okay. I just kind of roll with that because I like the change. I like not knowing if today is going to be like it was yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because you wake up and it's like every day is an adventure. I'm going to come back to that thought in a little bit, but I want to be clear too that strange is a pretty broad category, and like you and I are strange, but compared to some of the other strange people, we're totally normal.
Well, yes,
it's totally subjective, right?
Yeah.
And I saw an interesting quote on this website called Boots and All, which is an interesting traveler's website. And it was talking about expats in Bangkok. And it said, these expats have been characterized as the frauds, freaks, fools, and failures who could never make it in the quote unquote real world. But their stories are much more varied and complex than that derisive description would suggest. So I think what they're getting at is I think for a lot of quote unquote normals, I got to stop making air quotes with my fingers because
no one can see that. I can't even see that.
No, that's for my own benefit. I like doing it. I think for a lot of normal people, be they our friends back home or even our friends in Bangkok, who might not have the same likes as we do. Like, I have a lot of friends in Bangkok who think I'm crazy for going bike riding.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends in Canada who think I'm crazy getting on a motorcycle taxi. So, but there's also weird can be such a broad category. So when you go down to like Nana Plaza and you see some 70-year-old guy who weighs 450 pounds with psoriasis and 3 girls around him, and he's yelling at someone in German and he's half drunk, that's a weird dude.
Yeah.
But I don't know where I'm going with this, but basically it's just a subjective characterization. But at the very least, you have to be slightly different.
Yeah.
To really be happy here.
I think so. And if you look around the city and we start examining the other weirdo expats that we see here, a lot of the people who have been classified by weird or strange by their peer group really aren't all that weird and strange. They simply belong to a different social strata than what their friends are. And I'm thinking of the dreadlock tie-dyeds that you'll see all up and down Khao Road, right?
Yeah, those guys are weird to me. Those guys are freaks.
Well, those guys are weird and freaks, and to me they're weird and freaks not because they're dreadlocked and they're tie-dyed, whatever, but that they are part of a social structure that has its own rules and regulations that go along with that. Like, you must carry a djembe with you everywhere that you go, right? That's a required rule. That weird African drum thing they play all the time, a drum circle. Or
like bongos?
Well, not bongos. It's a djembe. You know what a djembe is? You've never seen a djembe? Well,
I'm not a weirdo.
I guess you're not that aware of the weirdo hippie culture, right? But that's
I'm one of the normals.
But that is very much a stratified, organized, whatever. And so, as much as free love and style that they're going for, they really play into the rings. Think about goths, right? Goths. To be a goth, man, they're weird. No, they're not. They're just different than you are. They're not weird. They're part of a different group. They're no more weird to you than a Chinese person is to someone who lives in South Africa. They're just very different. That's a social strata that's actually different. When I think about being weird, my version of weird is like when my family tries to describe what it is that I do, not here in Thailand, but even when I was back in America, like, what's my career? They go, I don't even know where to go with you, man. He marches to a beat of his different drummer. Yeah, exactly right. That's my kind of weird. And those are the ones I like that are uniquely weird, that have something totally different that's like, well, no, it doesn't really fit. Not that either. I wouldn't call. Yeah, that's what I like to do. And I don't do it on purpose. It's not like I strive to be the one that nobody can classify. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of who I am. And a lot of my friends are kind of the same way too.
I like that because when you meet new people in Bangkok who are expats, you already kind of have that shared thing in common where you know that the other person has rejected their own culture enough to move away from it. So you're already kind of identifying with them on a weird sort of subconscious, we're the weirdos over here level. And, that can go many different ways. I'll give you an example. One time I met up with a group of friends and we were out for dinner in the Nana area. And a couple of these guys started talking to me like, what's your favorite bar? Oh, which girl do you like the best? And I told them, I'm like, I don't really go to the bars. Like, I don't like bar girls. It's not a part of my life. I mean, I'll go and watch for as long as you need me to. I'm happy to do that. I like naked girls as much as any stranger. Right. But that whole seedy side of the red light thing, it's not something I'm into. That's just my thing. And these guys gave me the look like I had just told them I had tuberculosis and coughed all over their mashed potatoes.
Right. Right.
They thought I was the strangest, weirdest, most pointless dude. Like, why are you here then? So to those guys, I was the freak.
Exactly, because you were not acting in what they had come to understand was the accepted behavior. You didn't buy into that worldview. It's not that you were against it. It wasn't why you were here. So when I have friends that are they like to call themselves part of the tribe, and they always lump me into them going, I'm not a part of any tribe, right? I like to go across all of them. That's the fun part for me. And when I meet people in Bangkok, I see both types. I see the people who still get their high-paid Western jobs working for a company that's got a Thai office over here, and they don't live the the wild, chaotic ways, right? They just that kind of swirls around them around the outside, and that's fine. They can behave in the ways they want to. But for me, it's the most fun when you find those other weirdos and freaks like yourself that are just kind of hard to plug into an easy script and hand that to them. If they just do things different, that to me gets fun when people get interesting. Well, listen, instead of us talking about ourselves the whole time, can we get back and talk about Bangkok and the people that we meet here? Listen, man, you have been here for 16, almost 17 years now. Long stinking time you've been here. You must have encountered some pretty crazy, weird, and let's call them strange, lovable expats in your time. What's memorable? What stands out to you?
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit, and one stands out. Years ago, I was writing for a magazine, and I was waiting in the publisher's office. And this guy had been here years and years and years and knew everyone, the publisher. And I was just waiting for him. He was out on lunch or something, and he was going to be back in an hour. And knock on the door, and this old, like 65-year-old dude walks in, and he's just in rough shape. His hair's messed up. He's wearing like old dirty jeans and a half tucked in button-up shirt. And he's like hasn't showered in a few days, obviously, and he's got stubble. And he had a plastic grocery bag, like from a supermarket. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Hey, how you doing there, buddy? Is your boss here?" And I'm like, "Oh no, he's not going to be here for a while yet." "Oh man, well, we're old friends." And he starts talking, telling me the story. And he's like, "We're old friends, and by this point I can smell the booze on him,
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, we go way back, and I just came by, and he sometimes buys these charity mugs from me.
Oh,
and it's for a good cause and stuff." And he pulls this mug out of this ratty plastic bag he had, and it was like an old like Hard Rock Cafe coffee mug, and the handle was broken off, and it was like chipped and dirty and gross. And he's like, "Yeah, they're good mugs. You could drink a coffee, you could drink a soda, whatever you want. And yeah, maybe you want to buy one." And I was just kind of like, I think I'm good, man. Thanks. I don't need a mug right now, but I'll tell my boss you were here. And he's just like, "Okay, yeah." Like, not a clue that any of this was unusual, right? Like, just acting like he was the coolest guy and he worked on great terms. And he just kind of stumbled out back into the street. And I'm like, what does this guy's day consist of? Where he's going around selling mugs he probably found in the garbage or something. So,
yeah.
Was he homeless? I don't know. Was he just drunk?
Just insane? I don't know, right? One of the weird, eclectic types.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's only the expats that have to do with that. I mean, I think there's an undercurrent of craziness. Obviously, it doesn't matter where you're from. There's a certain number of people in your community that are going to be totally, on the crazy town train. But I think you were posting something a couple of days ago on Facebook about the crazy Thai guy that draws the weird diagrams and stuff on the pillars and on the streets, and I see it on electrical boxes and all over the place, and it looks like someone has drawn out this detailed circuit map, but when you go try and make sense of it, it doesn't make any sense. And as it turns out, this guy's relatively famous. He's been around for a while, and he's just bonkers, and he draws these things, and it's not art because he's nuts, right? I mean, it's not an artistic expression. He's crazy.
Yeah, it's a sad story, but he's a Thai guy.
He's a Thai guy, exactly. So, as I said, It doesn't have to be an expat. You can just be, there's crazies everywhere.
Yeah. But I don't know if this guy's crazy or just unfortunate, because the story was a little bit sad. And he said it kind of all went downhill when his wife ran away with his baby.
Yeah.
And he's a former art student who now sleeps under a bridge. And he writes, have you seen these things?
I have seen them. I see them all over the place now. Yeah.
These amazing like circuit board designs with English and Thai and numbers and strange phrases in them.
Yep.
And they look like Illuminati codes or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's just this random dude. And it was a really interesting article on coconuts. And they tried to get it out of him. Like, what does it mean? Why do you do this? And he just wouldn't answer.
No, it's because he's nuts, right? I mean, people who are just so stuck up in it. So, but beyond the crazy people, I think I was thinking about this too on what the expat experience I had, and without talking about crazy people, I went to an art exhibition recently. Now, I'm not a big art guy. I don't really get art. I don't mind art. I have nothing wrong. I have no bad feelings about art. But when it comes to art, a lot of times things that are art to me just looks like you just threw some paint on a wall, man. Come on, that's not really art.
Yeah, I'm on the same page.
Yeah, if you're gonna show me something beautiful, and I'll appreciate that. But you toss paint. It looks like that a monkey could have done it. I'm not going to be all that impressed by that. Yeah. Nice pottery work for a third grader, but let's not impress me. Come on, do something. So, but my lovely wife likes art, so I have to be nice every once in a while. So we went to this art thing. And it was in a very cool spot over here somewhere in the Sealoam area, and it was pretty neat. But what I discovered when we went to this art gallery, this art showing, people outdoors drinking champagne like you would expect at an art gallery, and some were Thai, but the vast majority were Falang. Almost all of them were French. There are like 90 French people who live here in Thailand who are artists who do their own thing, and they got their own little weird community clique that I didn't even know existed.
So automatically, I've been to parties like that too, and automatically you know you're the least fashionable person in the room. You're the least cultured. Mm-hmm. You eat the least amount of cheese. You drink the least amount of wine. So yeah, you were the weirdo in that situation.
I was the weirdo in the situation, even though I wasn't wearing like the pink velour jacket like the guy who was in charge of the thing was wearing. Because I recognized I was in Bangkok. But, I talked to a lot of these people, and, I actually, even though I don't appreciate art, I have a lot of friends of mine who are artists and do interesting things, at least many of them think, and sometimes I do as well. And they are fascinating people to get to know. Because when you can get them to not talk about their art, which is not easy, but if you can get them to do that, they will always have some weird view on something else. And it's just an interesting conversation, whether it's about macroeconomics, whether it's about politics, whether it's about social causes. There's something that they've got a completely different bent on. And it is so fascinating to have those conversations with people. And I'm just thrilled that I have stumbled into this weird 90-person group of French art lovers that call Bangkok home now. And I know some of them, and I've gotten to know a few, and that is so weird. I'm not going to do that when I'm back in Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. One time, your story reminded me of a time I was at a party and I met a dude and I got to talking to him, and he had just gotten out of a Spanish prison and was in Thailand for whatever reason. And I got to hear his story, and he used to be like a professional flamenco dancer. And he was here because he just wrote a book, and he gave me a copy of his book, and it was awful. But, I used to live in the building with a guy who I was really good friends with, and I'm not really good friends, but really good acquaintances in the building. We always talked and sometimes had dinner in the cafeteria. And then one day I saw him walking along with this woman who was clearly a transgender transvestite. I'm not sure what the proper term is, but in Thailand we just say ladyboy.
Yeah.
And I got to talking to him about it later. I'm like, so you're down with ladyboys? And he's like, oh yeah. And his whole thing was trying to convince other people that the ladyboy lifestyle was the lifestyle to live.
Right, man.
And that's great. Whatever works for you, buddy. Whatever blows your hair back, but not for me. But you go nuts. And it's just these kind of things. When I lived in Canada, I think the most interesting person I ever met in terms of someone outside of my own city and my own social group was someone from Mexico.
Okay, right.
And that's it.
Yeah.
But when you compare it to these people that we've just been talking about, like the amount of interesting / crazy / unique here it's sort of a vicious circle. Like you have to be strange to live here, but to live here, you have to enjoy the strangeness. Like,
yeah,
it fuels itself.
Right. Right. I think you're spot on with that concept. You've got, even if you don't let your freak flag fly, which you totally should, is awesome. You've got to appreciate that in others, or you're probably going to have a rough time of it living in the kingdom.
Right. And I always come back to a great phrase that I read in high school, and I've remembered it ever since. And it is, everybody is somebody else's weirdo.
Yeah, that's true. That is very, very true. And also, before we finish up on this topic, or I guess to wrap this topic up, probably since we've been talking about it for a while now, I know that we've got listeners that live in places like New York City and Hong Kong and Singapore and other cosmopolitan international cities that also attract their fair share of freaks and weirdos and oddballs. That's great. Bangkok is part of that same community and club. We're not trying to say we're any weirder, or our weirdos, we're part of that, by the way, are any weirder than your area. But for those listening out there who might be living in somewhat of a less diverse area, you just got to come experience this place to really understand how friggin' freaky we can be.
Yeah, yeah. Bangkok's not alone, but Bangkok's a good contender.
Yes, it is. Well, there's one thing that we think all those people will agree on, and that is what everyone's favorite segment of the Bangkok podcast is, and that is called Love, Loathe, or Leave, where we look at one minor aspect of living here in Bangkok and find out if it's something the two of us love about living in Bangkok, loathe about expat life, or if it's something that we hate so much it just might cause us to leave Thailand altogether. This week, I have the honors, my friend.
All right.
And I want to talk about terrorists with hedge trimmers.
Are you talking about Al-Qaeda dudes running towards you with a little buzzsaw?
Possibly. That's what they look like. Maybe terrorists who take fishing nets out on the river.
Okay.
I'm talking about these guys that wear hoods over their faces with little bitty tiny slits in them. You can't see their face. You can't see their head. You can't see anything. It's a hood. It is something that you would expect a terrorist to wear, except they're just the gardeners.
A balaclava.
They're just fishermen. They're not even a balaclava. I mean, this is like a full camo thing that drapes over their shoulders. They're just avoiding the sun. And it just, every time I see them still, in the 2 years I've been here, I still do a double take going, whoa. Because if you see that in America, that person's going to kill you. And everybody around you. But here, no, he's just trimming the hedges. That's really all he's doing.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That was a real big disconnect when I first got here, because I'm new to the country. I'm sweating out of every pore of my body 24 hours a day. And I'm walking down the street and there's a dude working in the sun in the bright noon daylight with a hat on and a mask over his face and sunglasses on and full long sleeves and gloves and jeans and flip-flops.
Right. Yeah, of course, got flip-flops.
Yeah. And of course it is because Asian cultures put a high value on light skin.
Yeah.
And do you understand where this sort of came from? Because I've read a few things over my time here, but there's one that keeps coming up, and it's one that makes the most sense to me.
I assume it's our fault, but I don't know. So,
well, from what I've read is because back in the day, if you were wealthy, you paid people to do your gardening. You paid people to build your buildings, to be outside.
Sure.
So if you had a lot of money, you didn't have to be in the sun. So people who spent all their time outdoors had darker skin, which was an indication of a lower social economic status. So if you got light skin, it's sort of like saying, "Hey, I'm wealthy enough that I don't have to be out in the sun."
Right.
It's kind of a holdover from an earlier time, which doesn't make sense in today's society.
Sure.
But that's what I've heard it comes from.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, light skin is valued here, and people go to great uncomfortable lengths to get it.
And I think even beyond having white light skin, I think it's just become the cultural norm that, okay, I'm going to work today, and everybody else on this work detail also has long sleeves, sweatshirts and this hood, not a hoodie, this hood over their face with a little bitty slit. So it's just kind of the accepted way of doing things. But when you're not used to seeing that, and they don't mind, by the way, this is the other thing. As I'm walking by this guy who's out trimming the hedges, he'll stop and just look at me. The whole time I was like, you have no idea how creepy that is, man. Stop looking at me, because I think you're...
And the funny thing is, keeping in with this week's theme, he thinks you're a weirdo. What a freak. He's out in the sun.
Right, what the hell?
His skin is exposed. What a nutcase.
He's going to burst into flames at any moment. I might need to put him out, he's thinking. So
you're his weirdo.
So to answer the question, love, loathe, or leave the terrorist with hedge trimmers?
I love it. I think, great. You want to protect yourself? Go nuts. It's probably good. I mean, you want to get a melanoma or a skin cancer.
Completely. Right? I try and avoid the sun as much as I possibly can. I get that. I love it too, because it reminds me, and you nailed it on the head, because suddenly I'm the freak. Because I'm the one that's exposing myself to these literally deadly UV rays. It is the one weird thing scientific that the Thais have grabbed hold of. These things will kill you, and I am running the risk. Not this guy with the hedge trimmers and his full-on body mass, who's got to be, 115 degrees under there. It's got to be, it's just so nuts.
I got to give it to him, man. They're tougher than I am, because when I go on my bike rides, I do two things to protect my arms, because I wear bike gloves. I either lather them up with sun cream, sunblock, or if I don't have that, I have these little neoprene sleeves that you can pull over your arms, and they're way too hot for me.
Oh, yeah.
And these things are like millimeter thick.
Right.
breathed fabric. I don't know how these guys wear these full suits.
Yeah, you're wearing your arm saunas, really what you have on at that time.
Yeah, exactly. My arms are like radiators, man. I got to have them in the sun all the time.
That sounds like a terrible thing. Hey, before we take off and get out of here, because man, this show has gone long. I need to do a quick shout out to the fans of ours who came out last week to the I Love Podcasting in Bangkok event. It was awesome. Will you agree?
Great time. Yeah, it was. It wasn't like there was hundreds of people there. How many people were there at a peak?
I counted 23 at the maximum number we had. 23 people, 5 of which you and I counted 2 of those were podcasters. The rest were just fans of podcasting, not necessarily Bangkok Podcast fans. Although I think most people there were familiar with our show or they had been brought by other people. But the thing that just thrilled me is that you and I had this crazy idea to throw this together a month ago and talked about it a handful of times. I throw it up on Facebook to find out what's the podcast community like, people that live in Bangkok. Yeah. And people showed up and we had a good time. And everything I saw from some of the other communities I'm on when we started talking about it, other online communities, people were like, oh, dang, I'm really upset that I missed it. When's the next one? Are we doing it again next week? And no, we're not doing it again next week, but we will absolutely do that again. So if you missed it, and you're going to be back here in November, we'll do it again. I don't know when yet, but I know November is going to be the next time that we do one.
Yeah, it was fun, and it was like I said, it wasn't hugely crowded, but it was definitely a quality over quantity. Everyone there was really cool, and I had some great conversations, met some new friends, and had many great laughs, a couple of good drinks. And it was a fun night. I'm glad you put it together. And we had it at Smalls on Soy So and Plu on the 3rd floor rooftop, which was a perfect size. It was a beautiful little place.
Did you get a chance to meet the new podcast that's going to be starting, the Spanish Sisters in Siam girls that were there?
Spanish Sisters in Siam, those 3 lovely Spanish ladies that came down? No, but I think it's a good idea. They should get together and do a Spanish language podcast. Because as I was telling them, even though I don't understand Spanish, damn, it's sexy to listen to. So I'll listen to your podcast.
I'm with you, girls. I am with you. Totally.
Well, yeah, thanks to everyone who came out to that party. That was great. And thanks to you for listening to the Bangkok Podcast. If you have something on your mind or just want to drop us a line to say hello, please leave a comment on bangkokpodcast.com. Or you can reach out directly to me on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg.
Or you can send us a message on Facebook or Twitter or Line at Bangkok Podcast. We're very, very good at responding to comments, questions, and those heaps of praise you like to heap upon us. So just post it. We will definitely say nice things and thank yous backwards. For Greg Jorgensen, I am Evo Terra. We'll be back next week with more stories of our lives lived in the City of Angels, right here on the Bangkok Podcast. Chok ti krap!